The boardroom smelled like floor wax and old money. Not the warm kind that smells like leather and pipe tobacco, but the cold kind. The kind that smells like ink and anxiety. I sat at the end of a mahogany table so long it felt like a runway. Opposite me sat my parents, Richard and Susan, and my sisters, Destiny and Alexa. They were dressed in black silk and designer sunglasses, looking less like grieving relatives, and more like a family attending a red carpet event for a funeral. They expected millions. Uncle Douglas was worth $45 million when he died. They had spent the last week casually mentioning beach houses in Malibu. They weren't here to mourn, they were here to collect. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, didn't look up. He opened a manila folder with the precision of a surgeon. To my brother, Richard, and his family, Sterling read his voice flat, who view people as accessories and love as a currency. I leave absolutely nothing. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was the sound of a lifestyle crashing into a wall at 100 miles an hour. Sterling turned the page. To my niece Chloe, the only one who ever bothered to ask how I was doing instead of what I was worth, I leave everything. Drop a comment and let me know. What time is it where you are right now, and have you ever seen someone's true colors come out over money? I'm reading every single reply. To understand why I didn't smile, why I didn't cheer when the millions landed in my lap, you have to go back 15 years. To the Rust Belt. To a house that was too big for us and a winter that never seemed to end. I was 13. My parents had decided to move to California. They said it was for Richard's career, but really it was because they had exhausted their credit in Ohio and needed a new audience. They packed everything into a moving truck. They packed Destiny and Alexa into the back seat of the SUV, but they didn't pack me. Someone needs to stay behind and watch the house until it sells, my father had said, not looking at me. He was busy adjusting the mirrors on the car he hadn't paid for in 3 months. It's a buyer's market. It needs to be staged. You're responsible, Chloe. You can handle it. They left me with a microwave, a sleeping bag, and a promise that they would send for me in 2 weeks. I stood on the porch and watched the taillights fade into the gray afternoon. I didn't cry. I just felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach, a knot that wouldn't loosen for a decade and a half. 2 weeks turned into 3. 3 turned into a month. That house wasn't a home. It was a tomb. At night, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was a threat. I learned quickly that silence has a texture. It feels like dust settling on your skin. It feels like the air pressure dropping before a storm. The refrigerator hummed with a low, angry vibration that sounded like a warning. The floorboards settled with loud cracks that sounded like footsteps, heavy boot-clad footsteps coming down the hall. I would freeze holding my breath, waiting for the door to open, but it never did. That was the specific horror of it. I learned to fear the sound of no one coming. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom because the empty closets looked like gaping mouths. I slept in the living room, curled up by the front door with a kitchen knife under the sleeping bag, guarding a house no one wanted, waiting for a family that had forgotten I existed. They called once in the first week. A quick, breezy check-in from my mother. We're settling in. The weather is gorgeous. Don't forget to water the plants. She didn't ask if I had food. She didn't ask if I was scared. Then the calls stopped. I saw them on social media, though. I saw Destiny posting selfies from a pool in Calabasas. I saw my mother holding a mimosa at a brunch I wasn't invited to. They looked happy. They looked complete. The photos were bright and saturated, a sharp contrast to the gray light filtering through the dusty windows of the Ohio house. It took me 6 months to realize the truth. They hadn't left me behind to watch the house. They had left me behind because I didn't fit in the car. Not physically, but aesthetically. I was the quiet one. The observant one. The one who didn't smile on command. I was the glitch in their perfect California dream. I was the reminder of the debts they were running from. I stopped going to school because I didn't have clean clothes and the washing machine had broken. I ate canned beans cold because the gas had been shut off. I forged my father's signature on utility notices just to keep the electricity running, teaching myself his loop and slant until I could sign his name better than he could. I became a ghost in my own life, haunting a house that was slowly dying around me. Uncle Douglas found me in November. He didn't knock. He just used a key I didn't know he had. I was huddled in my sleeping bag, shivering when the front door opened. I thought it was the bank coming to foreclose. I grabbed the kitchen knife I kept under my pillow, my hand shaking so hard the blade rattled against the floorboards. Douglas stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the gray winter light. He was wearing a black cashmere coat that probably cost more than the house itself. He looked around the empty living room, took in the stack of final notices I had organized by color on the floor, and then he looked at me. He didn't look horrified. He didn't look pitying. He looked like he was conducting an audit. He walked over to me gently, pushed the knife down with one gloved finger, and then walked past me to the kitchen. He opened the fridge. It was empty except for a half-empty bottle of water. He closed it with a soft click. He checked the thermostat. He checked the mail on the counter. "Pack your things," he said. His voice was low, gravelly, and sounded like a car engine idling. "I have to watch the house," I whispered. My voice sounded rusty, unused. I hadn't spoken out loud in 3 days. "Dad said I have to wait until it sells." "The house is foreclosed," Chloe Douglas said, not turning around. "They stopped paying the mortgage 4 months ago. They took the equity and ran. There is nothing to watch. Pack your things." He took me to a diner 20 miles away, a place with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like battery acid. I ate a burger with hands that shook so bad I could barely hold it. I ate like a starving animal, terrified he would take the plate away if I slowed down. Douglas watched me sipping black coffee. He didn't eat. He was a corporate fixer. People hired him to make problems disappear, to restructure failing companies, to cut the fat. He looked at me like I was a distressed asset he was deciding whether to liquidate or rehabilitate. "Do you know why they left you?" he asked when I finally pushed the plate away. I looked down at the table. "Because I wasn't good enough. Because I didn't fit." "No," he said, sharp enough to make me flinch. "That is the story they want you to believe. The truth is different." He leaned forward, and for the first time his eyes weren't cold. They were intense. "Your parents are narcissists, Chloe. They live in a fantasy world where they are rich, successful, and perfect. Destiny and Alexa. They buy into the fantasy. They reflect it back. They are mirrors. But you don't." He tapped the table with a manicured finger. "You look at them and you see the debt. You see the lies. You see the mediocrity. In a toxic system, the person who sees the truth is the most dangerous person in the room. That is why they purged you. You aren't the unlovable one. You are the witness. You are the black sheep. And in business, as in families, the black sheep isn't the bad one. The black sheep is the only one telling the truth." I stared at him. For 6 months I had thought I was garbage. Douglas flipped the script in 30 seconds. I wasn't unwanted. I was a threat. I was dangerous. "I am taking you to Chicago," he said, signaling for the check. "I am not going to raise you as a daughter. I don't do dad stuff. I don't bake cookies. And I don't give hugs. But I will train you. I will teach you how the world actually works. I will teach you how to spot a lie from across the room. And when we are done, you will never be left behind again." I looked at him, really looked at him. He offered me a handkerchief. I wiped my face, sat up straighter, and nodded. "Okay," I said. "Okay," he replied. "Let's go." The next 15 years weren't a childhood. They were an education. Douglas lived in a penthouse that felt like a spaceship, all glass and steel and cold, hard surfaces. There were no family photos. There were no birthday parties with balloons. There was only excellence. He taught me that tears were a waste of hydration. Emotion is just data, he would say when I got upset or overwhelmed. Analyze it. Leverage it. Discard it. If you are emotional, you are vulnerable. If you are analytical, you are invincible. I went to the best schools in Chicago, but my real classes happened at the dinner table. Douglas would put a complex merger contract in front of me and tell me to find the loophole before dessert. He would show me a failing company's balance sheet and ask me how to dismantle it for parts. I learned to read people like spreadsheets. I learned to spot a bluff by the twitch of a vein. I learned that kindness is a luxury, but competence is a currency. Competence is the only revenge that matters, he told me when I was 16. I was crying over a boy who didn't like me back, feeling that old familiar ache of being unwanted. Douglas handed me a tissue and a heavy book on corporate litigation. "Stop crying. If you are undeniable, they can't ignore you. If you are powerful, they can't hurt you. Be undeniable, Chloe." So, I became undeniable. I stopped trying to be liked and started trying to be effective. I graduated top of my class not because I wanted praise, but because I wanted leverage. I started working at his firm at 22. I became the person you call when you need a deal closed or a competitor crushed without leaving fingerprints. I wore tailored suits that fit like armor, and I didn't smile unless it was strategic. I watched my family from a distance. Social media is a window into a narcissist's soul, and theirs was wide open. They looked rich, they looked perfect. They posted photos of vacations in Tulum and shopping sprees on Rodeo Drive. Destiny and Alexa became influencers selling detox teas and a lifestyle they couldn't afford to an audience of strangers. My mother posted about blessings and manifestation. But Douglas showed me the truth behind the filter. He had alerts set up on their names. He pulled their financial records like he was reading the morning news. "Look at this," he said one evening, pointing to a credit report on his tablet. "They have 7 maxed-out credit cards. They have taken out a second mortgage on the California house to pay for the landscaping. They have 3 lawsuits pending from unpaid vendors." He scrolled down the red numbers glowing on the screen. "They are drowning, Chloe. They are smiling for the camera while the water rises above their heads. They think image is currency, but image depreciates. Debt compiles. I watched them sink year after year. I watched them leverage one loan to pay off another, and I felt nothing. The girl who cried by the door with a kitchen knife was gone. In her place was a woman who understood that the bill always comes due. And I was just waiting to collect." Back in the boardroom, the silence broke like a fever. My father stood up, slamming his hands on the mahogany table so hard the water glasses rattled. "This is a mistake. Douglas wouldn't do this. We are his family. We are his blood." "He did do it," Sterling said, not even blinking. He closed the first folder. "And the will is ironclad. It was videotaped, witnessed by 3 independent parties, and signed while Mr. Douglas was of sound mind and body. There is no mistake." My mother turned to me. Her eyes were wet, tears spilling over her designer mascara, but it wasn't sadness. It was panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Chloe, honey," she said, her voice wobbling with a performance of maternal affection. "I hadn't heard in 15 years. You can't let this happen. You can't let him do this to us. We are your parents. We raised you." I looked at her hand, manicured and ringed with diamonds she probably hadn't paid for. "You left me in a freezing house with a can of beans and a microwave," I said. My voice was steady, calm, conversational. "You didn't raise me, Susan. You discarded me. I raised myself." Her face twisted. The mask slipped. "We did the best we could," she screamed. The sweetness vanishing. "We were building a life. We made you tough. Look at you. You're successful because of us. If we hadn't left you, you wouldn't be who you are." "That is a fascinating revision of history," I said, "but it's irrelevant." Then came the pivot. The gaslighting shifted to desperation. My father walked around the table, looming over me, trying to use his physical presence to intimidate me like he used to when I was 12. "We are in trouble, Chloe," he said, his voice dropping to a growl. "Real trouble. We have debts. The market turned on us. The lifestyle cost more than we thought. We owe $1.2 million. If we don't get this money, we lose everything. The house, the cars, the status, everything." He leaned in close. "You have to share. It's your duty. You are family." I looked up at him. "Or what?" He sneered. "Or we sue. We will contest this will. We will tie this estate up in court for years. We will tell the press you manipulated a dying man, that you poisoned him against his own brother. We will ruin your reputation. By the time we are done, you will wish you were still that little girl hiding in the living room." I looked at Sterling. I gave him a small nod. Sterling reached into his briefcase. He didn't rush. He pulled out a second file. It was thick black and bound with a heavy rubber band. It landed on the table with a heavy thud that sounded like a gavel. "About those debts," Sterling said. My father froze. "What?" Sterling opened the file. He adjusted his glasses. 5 years ago, Mr. Douglas started a holding company called Vulture Capital. Its sole purpose was to acquire distressed assets. Sterling slid a piece of paper across the table. "It wasn't a will. It was a mortgage deed. My parents' mortgage deed." He bought your mortgage 3 years ago from the bank when you defaulted the first time, Sterling said. He bought your business loans. He bought your credit card debt from the collections agencies. He bought your lines of credit. He bought it all for pennies on the dollar. My father picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so violently the paper rattled. He read the name on the lien holder line. Vulture Capital, LLC. He owns our debt, my mother whispered. Owned, Sterling corrected. Past tense. He looked at me. As the sole beneficiary of the Douglas Carlton estate, you inherit all assets and all holdings, including Vulture Capital. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. To clarify, I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. I didn't just inherit the money, Richard. I inherited the paper. I own your house. I own your cars. I own the debt you used to buy those shoes. I own every single cent of the $1.2 million you borrowed. I leaned forward, matching my father's glare. I'm not your daughter right now. I'm your creditor. And the bill is due. The air left the room. It didn't just thin out. It evaporated, leaving a vacuum of pure, suffocating panic. My mother slumped back in her chair, her hand going to her throat as if she couldn't breathe. Destiny and Alexa finally stopped texting. They looked up their phones, lowering slowly to their laps. Their eyes were wide, terrified, darting between me and the thick black file in Sterling's hands. They were realizing for the first time in their lives that the hierarchy had flipped. I wasn't just the sister they ignored at brunch. I wasn't just the glitch in the family photo. I was the person holding the leash. You own our house, my mother whispered. Her voice was so quiet, it barely registered over the hum of the air conditioning. I own your house, I said, my tone conversational like I was reading a grocery list. I own your cars. I own the loan on your consulting business, Richard. I own the $90,000 in credit card debt you used to buy those silk dresses you are wearing right now. I own the vacation you took to Cabo last month. I own the furniture you are sitting on. I paused, letting the weight of it settle on them like a lead blanket. Technically, I own the clothes on your backs, but I'm not interested in used goods. Chloe, please, my father stammered. All the bluster, all the physical intimidation he had tried to use 5 minutes ago was gone. He looked small. He looked old. He looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was actually a trapdoor. We're family. You wouldn't hurt your family. We made mistakes, sure, but we are blood. I looked at him. I thought about the freezing house in Ohio. I thought about the silence. I thought about the way they looked right through me for 15 years. Family is an asset, I said, quoting the first lesson Douglas ever taught me. You are a liability. I opened my own folder. It contained the execution documents I had prepared 3 days ago. Here is the situation, I said. You are currently in default on 7 major loans. The interest alone is accruing at a rate that you cannot afford. I am calling the notes. Calling the notes, Destiny asked, her voice shrill. What does that mean? It means the bank is closed, I said. It means I am done carrying you. I slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany table. Here are the terms. Option A. You pay the full balance of $1.2 million plus accrued interest and legal fees via wire transfer within 24 hours. My father made a sound like a wounded animal. 24 hours, Chloe, be reasonable. We don't have that kind of liquidity. You know we don't. I know, I said. I have seen your bank statements. You don't have liquidity. You have leverage. And you just ran out of it. I pulled the paper back. Which brings us to option B. I signaled Sterling. He slid 4 heavy envelopes across the table, one for each of them. They were thick, official, and terrifying. Option B is immediate foreclosure and liquidation, I said. You have 7 days to vacate the property in California. You will surrender the vehicles to the repossession agents who are waiting in the lobby right now. You will liquidate your personal assets, jewelry, electronics, designer goods to pay down the principal. My mother grabbed the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Where will we go? She cried. We can't lose the house. We have standing in that community. We have friends. We can't be homeless. I looked at her, and for a split second, I remembered the 13-year-old girl curling up by the front door, waiting for a car that never came. I don't know, I said. Maybe you can find a house to watch until it sells. It's a buyer's market. The reference hit her like a slap. She flinched, her eyes filling with fresh tears. She remembered. "You can't do this," Destiny wailed, standing up. "I have followers. I can't be homeless. I have brand deals. How am I supposed to post content from a motel?" "Get a job," I said coldly. "Bag groceries. It pays $7.35 an hour. Save half, spend half. You'll figure it out." They broke then. The dignity vanished. They begged. They cried. My father tried to come around the table to hug me, to force a physical connection he hadn't wanted in decades. I didn't move. I just looked at the security guard by the door. The guard stepped forward, blocking him. "Chloe, don't do this," my father pleaded, reaching over the guard's arm. "I'm your dad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. We love you." "You love my utility," I said. "And I am no longer useful to you." I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. I picked up my folder. 7 days, I said to the room. Don't leave a mess. I walked out of the boardroom. I didn't look back. I heard my mother sobbing, a loud, ugly sound that echoed off the expensive wood paneling. It sounded like consequences. 7 days later, I got the confirmation. The keys were surrendered. The house was empty. I didn't go to California to see it. I didn't need to witness their exit to know it happened. I simply received the digital receipt from the repossession team. They reported that the house was left in a state of chaos, clothes left in closets, pictures taken off walls, but left on the floor the debris of a panic. It didn't matter. I wasn't keeping the house. I sold the property to a developer the next morning. He planned to bulldoze it. I liked that idea. I used the proceeds to set up a trust for foster kids who age out of the system, kids who are left behind, not by accident, but by design. The aftermath was quiet. There were no more screaming phone calls, no more social media blasts. Destiny and Alexa went dark online. Without the backdrop of wealth, their content had no currency. My parents moved into a rental 2 towns over. They were working. I heard my father got a job in sales starting at the bottom. I didn't check up on them. I didn't have alerts set up on their names anymore. They were no longer my liability. They were just people I used to know. I returned to Chicago. I stood on the balcony of Douglas's penthouse, looking out at the skyline. The city was a grid of lights, logical and cold. The wind off the lake was sharp, but I didn't feel it. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel the phantom draft of that empty house in Ohio. I felt light. I went inside and sat at my desk. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the spreadsheet I had kept since I was 13. The file was massive. It tracked every lie, every debt, every missed birthday, every dollar they spent while I was freezing. It was a ledger of pain converted into data. It was the map I had used to survive. I looked at the rows. The balance column finally read 0. I didn't archive the file. I didn't save it to a backup drive. I highlighted the rows. All of them. And I hit delete. The screen blinked. The data vanished. It wasn't a celebration. There was no champagne. I didn't dance. I just sat there in the silence of a room that finally felt like mine. It was the quiet, heavy peace of a contract fulfilled. I had paid my dues. I had collected my debts. And now the account was closed. I looked up at the ceiling, at the empty space where a family photo might have hung in a different life. "Thanks, old man," I whispered. If you've ever had to build yourself back up from 0, share a fire emoji in the comments. And if you believe that competence is the best revenge, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next chapter.